So next up, we're really talking about a transformation journey, specifically the digital telco. And if any of you understand a journey, you know because you got all the way over to the beach this morning in traffic. But the journey that we're going to be talking about is a little bit different, which is how do we bring enterprises into the 21st century and really look at what the true definition of digital transformation is. So please give a warm welcome, and joining me on the stage is Mark Popolano, who is the Senior Vice President, Chief Technology Officer, Managing Director of Claro Enterprises. Let's give Mark a warm round of applause. Mark?
Thank you very much. Well, hello everyone. What we're going to explain is a thing called the digital journey. And the problem with most organizations, we have large customer bases, and we're competing against digital disruptors. I'm assuming that everyone in this room has got at least one disruptor that's going against them. So let's get an idea. Let's talk about briefly the company so you get a sense. My organization's a $63 billion company. It's located as one of the largest telcos in Latam, but it's also migrating into the US, Canada, and Europe simultaneously. That creates a transformational nightmare. And at the same time, we have people in the industry, not only our competitors, but we have people in the industry that are also competing and working against us. Now, our company does everything from professional services down to selling pipes and mobility. We belong to the Claro group, which is an organization that does mining and banking. So we have a whole litany of different industries that allow us to basically leverage cross-vertical, what we call combinational innovation. And I'll explain what that is about. But briefly, let's have a slight movie of the things that I need to deal with on a day-to-day. If you think about my friend there, if any of you want to have a CIO or a CEO, well, that's my CEO there. The question becomes, how do we transform and transform rapidly? And then how do we grow new business models? So this presentation is not about tech. This presentation is about business models and the orientation you need in order to be able to go challenge the competitors that are out there. So let's think about the digital age the way it is. We are competing in a world that's basically divided. We have our telcos with strategic business partners, and what we're doing is we're trying to do value-added business delivery, and that's the key. The key is, how do you trust a telco to bring you the capabilities into a bank that goes beyond pipes? How do I become not a bag of pipes? And that transformation is critical if we're going to evolve. You see our competitors are out there doing the same. The Verizons, the AT&Ts, all the industries, CenturyLink, we're all going through this transformational age. How do we grab market share and how do we expand? So let's go through some concepts that become key. The thing that's critical is you need to be able to trust us that we're more than just a telco. Being our ability to be able to handle your transport is a given. We can do managed services. We can do computer service processing. We can run your transport. We can do SD-WAN. We can do 5G. We can do 4G. That's a requirement, and that's table stakes. But then it becomes a question, how do I drive, and what are the drivers of business digital disruption? Well, there's three drivers. Let's look at it in a simplistic view. It's cost, it's customer experience, and then most critically, it's platform. And I'll get into the details of that. We have digital disruption in the telcos, and you think that we're good at this, but the question becomes, we have the WhatsApp. Everyone knows what WhatsApp is right? Well, let's give you an example of WhatsApp. Wells Fargo Bank took 15 years to get 25 million customers. WhatsApp took 24 months to get 200 million. That's more customers than the country of Brazil. How do you compete against a customer base that big? And that's what digital disruptors do. They blitz. and they blitz effectively to grow a massive customer base, and then they do something very unique. They evolve. So you go from WhatsApp, a telco capability, and the next thing they're doing payments. They're competing in industries outside of themselves because they have a customer base that's a feedback loop. So what we need to do as incumbents is we have to find what we call value vacuums. And value vacuums are simple. Where do you find a niche opportunity that you can expand your business model to grow new revenue? And I'll explain that in further detail. The other one that's key is customer connection. The evolution of customer connection has changed. Not only do we need to be able to respond to customers, but we need to be able to respond to customers immediately. We need to also respond and advise them. And then in some cases, we need to automate the processes so that you're answering the question for them to solve their problem before they ask you. Think of when you go onto Amazon, right? You know your products, it's telling you, it's advising you, it's suggestion. Well, if you remember years ago, there's a process called Firefly. Anyone remember Firefly? No one's dated here. Firefly was the ability that I would be able to say, I like these type of pants, and I like these type of jeans. And the software in the background would go out and advise and check all the websites and identify for me those jeans I'm looking for within that price point. And at that point, they'd buy it for me. Well, customers want that. Not all customers, but some customers are looking to that level of automation to go beyond suggestion. So if you look at the telco, we are masters at mobility. We deal with customers in the day-to-day. And mobility is the leverage point of how we expand our capabilities to provide those services and customer connections to the end user population. That is our digital transformation armor. The most important piece is what I called combinatorial disruption, or I call it combinational innovation. Don't look inside your industry. In order to evolve as companies, you have to look cross-industry and cross-vertical, because what works in some verticals can also be applied to your own. And part of our transformation is looking at what's best in banking, what's best in insurance, what's best in oil and gas. And we have solutions that now solve those problems in things like fraud and fraud detection, compliance and regulatory control, temperature monitoring. These are our edge devices that go out there. But the edge solutions are now a plethora of information that comes in that we can bring business value to the end customer and allow them to evolve through analytics, through artificial intelligence, and then the extension and professional services required to solve their immediate problems, bringing them the tip of the spear value, and then grow the company as it needs to expand with the business partnership and with our ecosystem. So the challenge is not to be complacent, because complacency with many incumbents is, this will go away. Remember the internet? I remember having a VP and SVP many years ago, and his response was, the internet is just like what happened with utilities. This was 1997, I remember. And his response was, it's like utilities because it too will go away. Well, I guess he was wrong. He's also retired now, very wealthy, but he was very wrong. The internet did not go away. But now we transformed ourselves into digital theater. Everything is now digital and digital transformation. The drivers of disruption, if we look at it, is we have to be aware of the digital navigators. And these are nimble, agile companies that have a tremendous amount of velocity. Everyone in this room can identify a digital navigator that's basically at the forefront of your corporation trying to eat your customer base. And they can grow your revenue, and they can transform you. The startups have an advantage. The advantage of a startup, it's culturally designed to be a digital navigator because it needs to survive. And that hunger allows it to drive. The changes that we have in our organizations is that we need, as large companies, to look at the factors of cost, the experience, and the platform. And what I mean by that is, do I give it away for free to grow my customer base? Or do I come up with some type of model or competitive model that allows you to create that leverage point with me? The customer experience, is it collaborative? Is it not collaborative? Do I now try to drive the end user relationship? Do I change the mobility experience? Now, everyone in this room has a mobile phone? If I check your mobile phone and check your text messaging, and the way you text, I can determine your emotional state. Does everyone know that? Okay, that emotional state becomes key. We can identify information through mobility, where you're located, your temperature, the height, all the miscellaneous, but we can check the emotional behavior of the individual on their mobile device. The question is privacy. Do you think millennials are worrying about privacy? Does anyone have a child that's 7 or 8 years old? Anyone have a teenager today that worries about privacy? The next generation doesn't think of privacy the way we think. They look at privacy as transient, something that evolves from point A to point B. Go look at anyone who's a teenager, go check your Facebook pages. They're just inspiring. Now, the digital tools, what we do in the telco, we have defensive approaches to value vacuums. And what that means is we come up with various solution sets as our company to now identify what the risk factor, compliance, and controls are around that specific approach. And the point of digital vacuums, they're all transient. Digital vacuums do not survive longer than a certain period of time. The challenge is to create occupancy. And what I mean by that is you go from digital vacuum to permanence. And permanence is very difficult when you're going after niches in the defensive posture. But when you're not going into defensive posture, you can change that model quickly. This change, or this adoption rate that we're constantly going through, is the ability to look at not only first mover advantage, which is critical because that allows me to grow the top line of the company, but it's also then to say I have to culturally change, and internally I might need a different HR capability in my company. I have to change the human resource dynamics in my organization in order to bring in the correct vertical knowledge and the capabilities of the end individual. Because incumbents, just by nature, don't have that capability. They change their processes about what the evolution of the corporations are. And then you wonder, aren't we good at what we do because we're a telco? Well, yeah, we are darn good. But know what they're not good at? Speed and velocity. An incumbent is never good at speed and velocity. It requires two things. You need to be challenged and feel that you're at risk. That gets executive mindsets wrapped around the need and the ability to do change. But the second one that's also critical is that you have to be willing to go aggressively after the marketplace, because you can disrupt the market as fast as a startup. But you need to do spin-offs and subdivisions or sub-companies to be able to do it. You have to change your model. Your business model has to be reactive, and at the same time has to look at what the end point is to make the determination. So, disruption's taking place. Let's think about disruption. In the BPO world, or even in the ability to service end users, what ends up happening is that when we go out and respond to a customer, the need to go link beyond the call center to the end customer through mobility or through web or through portal now becomes key, because they become an interactive part of your edge. Customers want instantaneous gratification. They don't want to wait to sit on a phone or talking to a dialer. That's why we put AI in the centers. So this way it gives you the illusion of a human being. But you're changing and transforming the way people are getting connected. And that is what the real service capability of a telco environment's about. If we know the connection pool, the whole thing about how do human beings interact, you're changing the way that interaction works, and you're making it more effective and affordable, but you're also adding the capability of extending the model of that organization to transform its back-end capabilities. So when you go through the digital transformation, you're changing not only the customer experience, you're optimizing the company, and then most importantly at the end, you're changing its model. And that business model is what we're all looking for to create that vacuum niche for that organization, to bring it effectively. So, what do we do and how do we change? All organizations, if you go through the concept, everything becomes customer-centric. And what I mean by that is very simple. We no longer look at the business problem, but we look at the outcome of that business problem to the end customer. The customer that's going to be affected, not the customer internal to the company, the customer you're selling to. And by taking it from that point and working it through the stream, you can see the impact of all the gates you're putting into place to cause the transformation. You focus on your core competencies, but every core competency every organization has, whether it be healthcare, insurance, banking, you can look at those core competencies and evolve. Customer service in banking, the payment capability of payment aggregation, insurance and claim processing, healthcare and healthcare integration, telemedicine linkages to the end user, so when you're connecting over the environment, you can actually meet the end user, and at that point, you can actually see the reaction time that's happening with the end user through IoT devices and IoT capability. These are the things that are now transforming the edge, but also moving it to the back end, and that's transformative. Then it's the actual analytics that's happening, that's in the back end, and the predictive capabilities that are giving you the competitive advantage. And you heard on the stage, it's a lot of data, but you have to find those kernels of information that are key. And it's those kernels of information give you the competitive advantage to transform and change. So, be radical. We all want to be radical, we all want to do massive changes. The trick is you have to do it, and you have to identify not only being radical, but you also have to identify from a risk perspective. Risk analytics tells you that one, it's good to be radical, but two, will it bring in business value to your organization? Part of the transformation effort was, what products would I sell that actually give me an advantage? And we created a litany of edge. Those edge devices were lightweight, easy to deploy, extensible, easily expansible. On top of it, you have the ability to extract the data, and you can leverage or link it into any of the back-end capabilities. The other solution we could have had is what everyone else does. Build heavyweight backends that everyone tries to integrate to, be the solution to everyone, and then at the end be the solution to no one. You're not solving the business value proposition. So, what did we do? We changed our model. Now, one of the advantages of our telco was because of our size, we own a number of brands like Embertel. Embertel is the largest media organization of Latam with Spanish content to be able to sell over basically mobility phones. That gives us a capability to sell new services and new capabilities for stickiness. E-commerce. Not only going out to our partners to do e-commerce capabilities, but how do we extend e-commerce and link into partners that we can now become more extensive for the retailer and be able to expand. Again, looking at not only what we can do, but how we can expand our capability to extend into markets and provide new services. Real-time and AI analytics, the holy grail of everyone in this room. In this space, when you're looking at that information, it's the whole concept of data orchestration and capturing the information. This allows us an extensive portfolio of capabilities that can go across verticals. We're focusing on healthcare, which is key. Retail, heavily into the AI world and its AI capabilities. Not only on digital and looking at how people behave in a building, but also how people react in a building. And by where did they stand? Where did they go? How long did they stay at a window? How long did they pick up an item? When did they stand to the EPOS? What is their face like when they go buy the item? Are they reacting? Are they happy? All that information are data points. And those data points are captured and then analyzed and then redistributed. OTT solutions. We all know the edge. We have a philosophy that's different. What we do is, and I said, lightweight, low code. That gives us our ability to be able to distribute our capabilities very rapidly. And I'll give you a prime example. We were building an OTT capability for LAID devices. These are large, multi-million-dollar machines that produce material outputs from the system. And what we did is when we put in our system, we were checking simple factors: humidity, temperature, lux, particulates. What we had covered as we were going through that analytics, we found out that the particulates out of the lathe machine were actually contaminating the worker. We were finding out that this would cause risk. The tip of the spear solution now became an IoT solution to be sold by human resources. Because human resources now believes they have to protect their worker. So it became a protected worker play when we first started with operational optimization. It's finding another vacuum that we weren't planning for. By the way, the customers' feedback loops actually came back to us. Professional service integration. You can sell all the systems you want. At the end of the day, if you don't integrate them, that's a side that's missed, because OTT or Edge or IoT without professional services, you're missing the end-to-end. You can drop it in, but you need to be able to mine it, and you need to be able to extend it. So when we look at the assets of a company, and we look at our capabilities, what we've done is we evolved ourselves into the whole concept of the mobile space, but now looking at everything as mobile. And in that mobility, what can you do to the end customer, and how do you give instant gratification to the end user population? This is a transformative change in that many companies are attempting it, but because of the amount of data that we're able to mine and analyze, we're able to see the impact and then be able to immediately adjust the feedback loops to be able to grow and to expand. So our circulatory system is our transport layer, but now let's take cruise lines. We heard just about a cruise line indicator. Cruise lines have a need when the ships get next to shore to be able to transport telecoms to the end user. Well, we've created bonding capabilities that allows them to do it through cellular. And because of eSIM technology, we're able to cross multiple carriers simultaneously that gives them higher throughput at much lower cost. This allows cruise lines, as they're traveling along the shoreline, to be able to service the end user with a high volume of data that changes the customer experience to their end customer unit. Again, solving their customer problem, not solving a telco problem. So we're seeing a seismic shift in customer connections. And this is where, if you look at what's happening, we could do a number of things that customers want. We can immediately respond to their desire. Customers want to be responded to. But now what we're doing is we're evolving that we're starting to give coaching behavior. We think this is a good idea. Each one of these techniques is dependent upon the privacy concerns of the end customer. If he wants to share information or not share information, you use a different technique to respond to that customer's need, and you go as far as up the line of automating the response in order to optimize his experience. So we're looking at the connectivity that's going on and then reacting to it at the end user point. This now changes the dynamics of how we respond. And so it allows us to either suggest, automate, advise, or in other, just simply say, we're going to move you along a certain line and you make the end decision. So you're giving that capability to the end customer. So if we look at, in a nutshell, the digital transformation is a business model that's been well planned. But what you can do is you can either retreat or harvest the existing environments. These are basic strategies that you play. The most important one is that if you do a digital disruption or a vacuum, you have to do an occupy strategy. You have to own that niche, and then you have to evolve it. If you don't create the permanence in a digital disruption, they transient and they dissolve within a question of 6 to 12 months. This is why you see a lot of startups fail. They don't own the niche. They don't expand beyond a certain critical mass, and they don't evolve themselves. It's the same with incumbents. We need to do the same. So, what I ask everyone in this room, think disruption, but the most critical point is think about what you own and how do you evolve it. Because if you're not evolving, you're complacent. If you're complacent in today's environments, you see the major companies are disappearing. In the telco world, we're under a competitive construct because we have a large capex. Other corporations like Industry 4.0 have similar issues. But look at your world and say, how do I go from the material basis to the dematerial basis? And when I dematerialize that company, what are the capabilities of extending my channels, extending my customer base, and then evolving my solutions that meet the end customer need, not my internal needs? Look, I I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope, I mean, as a New Yorker, I know I speak very fast, but I thought this was something that may be worth listening to. Well, thank you very much.